This evening, we reveal a damning government study into refugees and how they fare once they've been allowed into Australia. In the first of its kind anywhere in the world, the Department of Immigration report shows current government policy is effectively importing unemployment. As Brian Seymour reports, refugees and other migrants aren't getting jobs, depending on welfare for at least 5 years, many for much longer.
These figures are disturbing, they're concerning, they're disappointing.
Forget the riots at Villawood, Curtin and Christmas Island. We've got bigger problems.
I think the Department of Immigration knows it's a politically charged issue. That's why they slipped this report out under the cover of a royal wedding.
We saw the kiss. Here's the tell. This report on refugees and asylum seekers might have remained largely unread, but for the extraordinary findings that have leapt from its pages.
And after 5 years, you've got 83% of people still receiving some form of benefits. You've got two-thirds who haven't been able to find a job.
Scott Morrison is the federal opposition spokesperson on immigration.
That level of unemployment, that level of lack of employment, that level of welfare dependency, combined with difficulties with English language and other things, has the potential to drive people to be excluded from the Australian community.
The report is titled Settlement Outcomes of New Arrivals. It surveyed 8,500 new arrivals, including skilled migrants and those reunified with their families here, but it focused on the humanitarian intake. Australia last year approved over 168,600 people to migrate here. On top of that, nearly 14,000 people were approved under the humanitarian program, including refugees, asylum seekers and boat people. This report reveals that despite their smaller numbers, this group has massive problems with learning English, employment, welfare and education. Of the refugees who have arrived here over the past 5 years, 85% receive Centrelink payments, including the unemployment benefit, youth allowance, Austudy and childcare rebates. Refugees who have lived here between 4 and 5 years clearly find it hard to get work. Only 39% are employed. Incredibly, the employment breakdown shows 57.2% do something other than being unemployed, including retired, caring duties, full-time study, voluntary work or setting up a business but no income yet. A factor not helping the employment problems is that nearly a third can't speak English, even after living here for 3 to 4 years.
The fact that 5 years later only 31% of those on a humanitarian visa have a job does show the government needs to do more work in transitioning those arriving into the workforce.
Social researcher Marc says he's not surprised by the figures.
Those arriving from the toughest part of the world with the toughest experience are facing the worst results here in Australia. And I note that less than 1 in 10 of those coming from Afghanistan have a job 5 years later. But it does show that they need to be given more resources and support to fully transition them into the workforce.
Some of them obviously do believe they don't need English because they stay in their migrant communities. They probably keep among themselves, they're not integrating with the wider Australian community, and therefore they get by without English skills, even after 5 years.
Oliver Marc Hartwich from the Centre for Independent Studies is himself a migrant here under the family migration stream with his Australian wife for nearly 3 years now. His first priority was to polish his English skills.
I think it should probably matter more, and when you're assessing welfare, you should take into consideration their willingness to integrate, their willingness to learn the language. At the moment, we're not doing that enough. We're not doing it to the degree that's required.
This report will no doubt spark intense debate about who we should invite to live here, how much we should expect of them, and how much do we owe them. Take today's front page. Soon, teenage mums across the country will be required to go to work or study or risk losing their entitlements. Should we apply the same principle to migrant welfare recipients? Critics say unless new arrivals commit or are required to learn English quickly, they will continue to form cultural enclaves, living apart among us.
When this government first came into power, there were just 4 people in detention and there were virtually no boats arriving. That's all changed now. So our focus is now on the chaos in our detention network rather than having a stronger focus on those who have come through the front door and helping them to integrate into the Australian community and, most importantly, to get a job.